Episode 131 of the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Welcome back. My name's Jeremy, hosting today's conversation that I got to have with Michael, youth pastor all the way over in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And if you are not from our country, you may have to Google where Saskatchewan is. It is the easiest province to draw of our country of Canada, a wonderful part of the world. I got a chance to spend a number of years in Saskatchewan at school and then have connected with youth workers there over the last number of years. And Michael has got a phenomenal story of what we might say is really healthy, thoughtful ministry happening, not in a massive, surprisingly megachurch kind of environment, but really fruitful ministry from this idea of doing long-term investment as small group with their small group leaders. And so he'll get into the details on that and explain a little bit of his context. But what I love is that we can bring to you, the volunteer youth workers, stories of ministries that are thriving, that could be very similar to the stories that you might experience in your own church and your own ministry. So here, hopefully, a few thoughts and ideas that you can bring into your own context, and you can learn from this great youth ministry that's happening in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Now, before we jump into today's conversation, I want to make sure that you know about one of the incredible partners for the youth worker community. We love Trinity Western University, and they've been along with us for the journey. If you've been listening to the podcast over the last number of weeks and months, you've certainly heard us talk about them lots, and we want to make sure that as youth workers that you know about the great places that for your students when they graduate from your ministry, the great places that they can end up. And Trinity Western is one of those spots. I was talking today with a number of pastors actually on in my part of the country and the east coast of Canada. So I'm in New Brunswick, and we were just talking about, man, how do you help students see vocation as something that they can be called to, that they can actually bring their faith into their vocation, especially even when it's not a ministry vocation, that, somebody that graduates and they go on to do law, or they go on to do work in the business sector, or they go into nursing, whatever it might be. How do you make sure that they see their faith and how they can actually take that and live it out inside of their own vocation as a calling? And so Trinity Western does a great job of thoughtfully preparing students for the marketplace and to make sure that their Christian character, their Christian witness is intact and that it's cared for, and that as student leaders that they're kind of raised up with this idea of carrying faith into their world beyond their youth group. And so we really, really love the work that they're doing. I think you definitely need to be checking that spot out so that you can thoughtfully recommend for your students as a place for them to prepare for their vocation. So think about that. Trinity Western, they're linked in the show notes, and want to make sure that you can get to there just as quickly as possible. And if you've got any questions, you can drop us a line. Youthministry.team is the website for this podcast. So you can drop me a line that comes straight into me. If you want more details on Trinity, if you want to drop us a line of an idea of a future episode, if you just want to chat, let us know. That would be fantastic. And then today's conversation with Michael, brought to you by the start of our coaching cohorts. And so Michael was a part of our coaching cohort last year, and that's how we got a chance to hear a bit more of his story. So we're really excited about the work that we get to do with a number of youth workers across our country and beyond. And so we'll drop a link to our coaching cohorts as well in the show notes if you want to check that out. All right, let's jump into today's conversation that I got to have with Michael from Saskatoon.
Welcome to the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Youth ministries rise and fall on the volunteers. So we are here to encourage and equip you. Join the conversation as we tackle the practical questions you are asking so you can help the next generation know Jesus.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined by Michael Streilein, all the way from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Now, Michael, did I say your name correctly?
I was going to say, we should probably tell you how to say my last name because no one says it right. It's Streilein.
Streilein.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I completely butchered it. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. Everyone does.
Where does Streilein come from? What is
German.
Oh.
Yes, German in origin.
How close is the German in your family? Is it like your grandma came over, or what happened?
Yeah, so both sides of my family came from like the Germany area. So my grandpa moved from Poland, is where they lived in Poland and then escaped to Canada during the World Wars and all of that.
Wow.
So that's how we ended up.
Do they have stories about all that time? Like, have you gotten like?
They didn't ever want to share them. So I think they did, but they didn't want to talk about them. So yeah.
Yeah, and fair enough, because that was a crazy time, but. Still so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks. Thank you. Sorry for butchering your name off the top. But I'm still glad. I'm very grateful. I hope you'll stick around to share with us, because we've got a really fun conversation about this culture, about your church, about the way that you're leading, that I think is going to be helpful for everybody. Now, our podcast and our listeners are primarily volunteers. That's our point of reference. But to be honest, we got lots of point leaders that are listening too. And so people just kind of filter in the conversations based off of whether they're the decision makers or whether they're a part of the team. And so we're grateful for that. But to give people an idea of just where you're coming from, your church, a bit of your ministry context, can you fill people in on where you serve, what the makeup of the church is like, what your youth ministry is like, and then we'll dive into our topic for today.
Yeah, for sure, Jeremy. Yeah, so I live in Saskatoon. I serve at Cornerstone Church here, and we're a church of about 350 people. So not a large church, not a small church, but we have a pretty thriving kids and student ministry at our church. So I serve everything from grade 5 through young adults is kind of my regime as a student ministries pastor. And pre-COVID, we were running about 75 students between grade 5 and grade 12 weekly, sometimes higher, sometimes lower, depending on friends and things like that. And about 50% of them come from our community. So we run about a 50% split between our church kids, our community kids. And it's just been really exciting seeing that growth that's natural from kids inviting friends. And just now we have our community kids inviting friends. And
Yeah, you were saying that, and that's so people don't necessarily know, but if you're in this is a vocation, sometimes we use different percentages markers as understanding what's healthy for churches in terms of reaching the next generation. And a stat that's often used is 10%. That if your church is 350 people, there's likely 35 teenagers that are connected in some way or affiliated through their family in your church, and so a healthy youth ministry is about 10% of your overall church attendance. So to be at 75, that means that you've already reached beyond, and as you've mentioned, over half the kids are coming from the community, maybe not a church background, and now you're seeing those kids even invite their friends, which is an incredible marker of something's going really well, it would seem, in your youth ministry.
Yeah, no, and I mean that's all God. We just trust Him, and we feel blessed to be able to serve and to just connect with these students. And our church has never focused on the numbers, which I think has been a huge strength of ours. It's never been you're not reaching metrics or you're not doing those things. When I started, there was like a pretty unhealthy culture. And so we were sitting at maybe 10 kids a week. And so we just started building up this culture of relationship, and that is really, we've seen huge growth from it, but it's never been about the growth. It's just been about the connection. And so I'm sure we'll talk a bit about that, what's led to that growth in the next little bit here for sure.
Yeah, because it is interesting when you think about the ability to connect with these unchurched kids. Like you're offering you're bringing people in and sharing the gospel with them. Like this is what we're obviously called to do, and in a way that isn't like flash in the pan. Like it really is the way that you were talking a little bit beforehand, that there's some significant ministry that's happening. These are real relationships and that are being built, and that the ministry is going for the long term. And so again, and I'm sorry for maybe staying on some of the number things, but tell us about the amount of kids that just graduated from your ministry, because I think I'm amazed by that in and of itself, that you've had such consistency through to grade 12.
Yeah, so we had 17 students graduate this year, and so that was just super excited. We got to have a grad ceremony from them here at the church on the weekend. They didn't get grad ceremonies at school really because of COVID, so with the latest regulations, we were able to have a gathering of 150 on Saturday. And so we got to just celebrate them, give them fake diplomas and a grad gift, and just like share some stories and some connections. And so it's just been really cool to see the way they've continued to engage all the way through to grade 12. Even in the midst of this year where we went online for a large portion of it, they were still connected and engaged. And so, yeah, that's been really, really exciting.
Yeah, and people kind of know from the episode title, we're talking about why and how you go for long-term youth ministry. And for volunteers, thinking about, volunteering over the long haul, that's a bit of a commitment. And yet, a lot of these things that you're experiencing, I think you would say you would attribute it to some of the volunteers that are part of your ministry that have been around for the long haul. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. So we run a pretty heavy small group focused ministry. And so our small group leaders are these students' pastors. They're the ones that shepherd them, connect with them, do discussion with them. Sometimes they're the ones teaching. I'll sometimes teach as well, but it's really about that small group connection and that ability to discuss and learn together that's been a core focus of the way we've structured our programs.
And so for example, for these grade 12 students, talk to me about their leaders, because there's a lot of grade 12s in a lot of our ministries that are represented, right? That are, disengaging, grade 12, there's a lot going on. So they stop coming to youth groups, stop coming to church, whatever it might be. What are the leaders? What's the journey of the leaders of those grade 12 kids from your ministry?
Yeah. So I think the unique thing about our ministry is that we have these long-term small group leaders. So the students in grade 12, their small group leaders have been with them since grade 7. So we've had this long journey of relationship happening. So we split our groups by gender and by grade. I know not everyone does that. That's what works for us, but you can make this work however you decide to break up your small groups. But we've had our small group leaders intentionally connect with a group and then move up with them. And that's not to say that every leader has always stayed for the full 6 years, but that's the ideal. And so for these grade 12s, they've had the same leaders for 6 years. And so there's just deep relationship, deep trust. They're friends. They want to connect with their leaders. They've been posting on social media the last couple of days about how sad they are that this consistent part of their life is over. And so it's been that encouragement of, hey, your leaders are not going anywhere. So our leaders are graduating out of our programs with these students. And so they're committing to connecting with them for the next year, starting Bible studies with those that are sticking back, and just continuing to build relationships and helping them to find connections, whether that's at our church or at a different church if they're moving away for school or whatever that looks like. And so that connection to a small group leader has been huge at retaining our students and just hopefully giving them this faith that will last.
So unreal. Why or how did these leaders decide to commit to moving up even after graduation to continue to track with these leaders? What sparked that?
Yeah, so we took a look at the hemorrhaging faith study and the renegotiating faith studies that came out, and just this concept that having a consistent connection with somebody in the church after high school, even if it's 3 check-ins in that first few months, drastically increases the chance of a student staying for the long term in a church, not our church, but a church and in their faith. So we had been kind of discussing that with our leaders of, hey, maybe just be checking in on them over the coming year, things like that. And they were like, no, we want to do more. We want to continue these relationships. We want to continue these connections. And so they're like, do you care if we start a Bible study with them? And I was like, no, that's amazing. Go and do that. That's the ideal. If I have to lose a leader because they're starting a Bible study with some young adults, that's the goal. So it's just been really exciting to see our leaders realize the importance and also value these relationships and say, I want to continue this in whatever way I can. So yeah, that's been our experience.
So that's brilliant. That is exactly what we all should be doing. It's the secret sauce we know from, as you mentioned, the research to make those connections post high school. So props to you guys. How have you, or how have those leaders been so committed to the long haul? That seems like such a thing to go from the students from grade 7 to track them through. We're talking, at this point doing, what is that, 5-6 years of ministry, by the end of it. What made them interested in all that? Yeah,
I think as we try and find volunteers, we talk them through that, hey, we're asking for this long-term commitment. We're not saying you have to. We understand seasons change, life changes, things happen, but we want you to consider making this investment for the long term. And we just talk about the desire for relationships. So we have these core values in our ministry that we want to see our students have a passion for Jesus. We want them to find real relationship while they're in our programs, and we want to give them opportunities to live out their faith. And so one of those core things is that relationship piece. And so we're saying, we're asking for you to invest in a relationship. And so we take a look at the John 13:34 and 35, where it talks about you will know that they will know you are a disciple by the way you love one another. And we just talk about love on these students build relationships with these students. If any of you have served in junior high ministry, right, we all know grade 7 boys aren't the most talkative all the time. When you ask a deep question and just encouraging them that, hey, there's going to be hard seasons. There's going to be seasons where you don't feel like you're getting through to them. And so focus on the relationship side instead of the maybe spiritual depth side in grade 7. And then as those relationships come, the conversations will also happen in those opportunities. And so having our leaders continue to serve, they're seeing that depth of relationship and they're seeing that, wow, I'm getting through to this kid that I didn't think it was possible to get through to, and just they get excited about the relationships and like what they see happening in these students' lives. And then I think that just helps encourage them to continue serving because they see the fruit. And so, yeah, I think for any of us in ministry, whether it's vocational, volunteer, anything, sometimes it's hard in seasons where we're not seeing fruit to be like, well, am I where I'm called? Am I doing what I should be doing? But just trusting that God's in control and God's the one changing hearts, and we're called to be faithful. And so it's reminders like that I think have helped us in the long term.
It's so interesting. Like Michael, was this sparked by something, this idea of like digging in for the long haul? Was that something that you've led through, or that you felt like you maybe inherited from the leaders, or who kind of has been championing this at your church?
I think it's a little bit of everything. So when I got hired, there were a lot of long-term leaders, but there was just not relationships with students. They were long-term leaders that had relationships with each other. And so they kept coming back because they liked hanging out with each other. And so I went, well, this is like a cool thing that we have leaders that are willing to serve for a long time, but let's refocus on where they're supposed to be and why they're serving. It's not about your friends that are the leaders. We can connect, and that's important. And so friendships within the leader group is also something we focus on and trying to find connections for them. But and then also just we have, like, in our kids ministry, we have some people that have been serving. I was talking to somebody the other day. They've been serving in kids min for 18 years at our church. So wow. Just like, which is mind blowing to me. And so this just like, there is just this genuine culture at our church of, I think, this desire to serve long term. And so our ministry and our focus within students was like the long-term relationships. So that's why we implemented moving up with small groups and stuff, because that's not something that happened in the kids min side. But I think there just is a really healthy culture in our church of like pushing people to serve and to connect and to build relationships. I think it helps that our family ministries pastor is also our executive pastor. So that idea of like the next generation and serving the next generation gets championed from the executive director side too. So that definitely helps. But I think it's just a lot of things coming together. That's my passion has always been long-term connections and relationships. And so even before I came to Cornerstone, I had been involved in a lot of mentoring relationships and connecting with students long-term. So that was something I brought with me. And then it was something that I saw at our church already. And so, yeah, just a lot of things coming together to make this happen.
Oh, that's awesome. So, there's probably a couple of people listening and they're like, oh, that sounds great. I would love for our ministry to be like that, or to have that kind of longevity, for people to consider doing long-term ministry in that way. But we're just not there yet. What would you say to them to encourage them to fight for it, or to lean into it, or to try to build that culture?
Yeah, I think like the encouragement I can give is like, it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not always going to be easy. Cause I'm talking about like, there's a great culture, but we still have to work really hard to find the right volunteers. And so our vetting process for our volunteers is pretty high. We have like other areas people can serve if they don't want to serve long-term, or they like are, not sure about like how well they'll disciple students or things. We want to find places for them to serve, but we actually have a high level of requirement and commitment from our small group leaders, because we're saying you're investing in these students and you're going to pastor them, and we want you to be this role model for them. So we want to make sure that we're picking the right people. But there are years where we struggle to find enough volunteers, because one of the things is every year we need to find probably 4 to 5 new volunteers to start with that next group, to start with those next students. So there are years where we've had to combine groups while we find more leaders, especially this past year with people not wanting to serve because of COVID. We had to shift some things around. And so there's an ideal, and then there's the reality that it's not always going to work. And just trusting that God's in control, and praying about who you want to have come serve with you. And I think a big part of it is those one-on-one connections and talking to people, being like, I see this in you and I think you would be amazing at this, and this is why. Most of my volunteers have come from those conversations. I can't really think of any of our long-term volunteers that came from a blanket, we need student ministry volunteers. Those generally don't work. It's about the hard work of getting to know the people in your church, and then seeing their gifting and then speaking it out in them, and then challenging them to try it. We usually say, hey, like, let's try this for a year. This is our ideal, is you would stay for the long haul, but we're not saying you have to, but like, give it a year. Let's try it out. Let's see if you like it. And if you do, then let's talk about how this will work long term. So I can't give you a magic formula to make it work, but I think it comes down to a lot of prayer, a lot of conversations, and a lot of no's. I get a lot of no's. So you have to maybe get used to getting people saying no to you, and have that tough skin to be like, okay, and moving on to the next conversation. But I think that's what's worked for us, for sure.
Oh, that's so good. And to be honest, if there's people that are listening that are volunteers, oftentimes you're one of the best people to do some recruiting, because you're a satisfied customer in lots of ways. This isn't your job to go out and recruit. And yet, if you're enjoying the investment that you get to make in teenagers' lives, and, you're committing to the long haul, to invite people along in the journey is certainly a massive win, and can be such a gift, not only to the rest of the ministry, but obviously to the teenagers that they'll get to influence and invest into. So yeah. I love that so much. Michael, this has been so helpful. And I know for lots of folks, even just imagining going the long haul, people are processing like, I don't know about this next season. Am I going to, re-up my commitment or whatnot? I'm hoping that listening to some of the wins that you guys have been celebrating, and some of the things that are happening in your ministry, will be wind in their sails, and will maybe help push them towards continuing on and continuing to be a part of their ministry team. Are there any last words or ideas or words of wisdom that you want to leave people with?
Yes, you just sparked something that I remembered. You have to share stories. Share the stories of what's happening in your ministry. We're going to get some of our leaders that have served for 6 years that just graduated out. We're going to film them, share their stories of what they've seen happen, their excitement about things, the relationships, and get them to talk about why this was a valuable experience. So if you do have that, like even one long-term volunteer, get them to share why they love it. Get them to share why they do it. And that's the best recruitment tool you can have, is sharing stories. We have one student in our ministry that has been lovingly named by his leaders as Wise Eddie. And we tell that story to our kidsmen leaders, and they're like, Eddie, like the Eddie? And we're like, yeah, Eddie that was in your program last year. And they're like, he has what nickname now? And so being able to just talk about what those relationships have fostered, he now shares these just deep words of wisdom that, like, in our kidsmen leaders are like, I don't believe you. I don't think this happened. And so just being able to like share those stories, share the wins, share what relationship has done, allows just excitement for other people to get on board, being like, yeah, I want to do that. That's something that I think I want to experience, and I want to invest in somebody's life in that way. So using stories is a huge thing too.
That's amazing. So good. Thanks so much for your time, Michael. We certainly appreciate having you on. And again, people will be encouraged by it. We'll link your church in the show notes. So if people want to track with what you guys are up to, they can certainly check you out there. And really appreciate your time.
Sounds good. You are very welcome. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.